Hello, my friends. It's your buddy Phil here, project management trainer and coach. I know lots of you are getting ready for the PMP exam, and you see the table I'm drawing out. And I know you've heard from a lot of your instructors, you don't have to know this table. It's not asked on the exam. Well, yes, it's not going to be asked wrote on the exam, but not knowing this table leaves you vulnerable in a lot of respects. So I want to advise you to know this table as good as you can. In fact, I would like it if you just knew it because it's going to help you, not only on the exam, but also in life. So what we need is 10 columns, 10 rows, I beg your pardon, and 5 columns. So let's see if we've got all the columns we need. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost. We're going to have to divide 1. Let's divide this. Okay. So this is a great opportunity for you to take a pen and a paper. Follow along with me. It is going to go very quick, but I'm going to show you how to process the information. Okay. There's a mnemonic that goes like this. I prefer extra money in cash. And that just stands for initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, I'm going to make this a bit smaller. Let's make it a little bit smaller so it fits in that box. Monitoring and controlling and closing. Those are the 5 process groups of project management. Before you start any project in the world of the PMI, the Project Management Institute, you should authorize that work. That's initiating. When the work has been authorized and you as the project manager have been identified, then you can plan, right? This is planning. Then you can apply the resources to the project. You can work with a team. You can hire those you need in executing, and you plan with those folks, the team members, right? So you initiate, you plan, you execute, you monitor and control, and you close. Now, this is not linear. I want to make it clear that if these were 5 components, if this was initiating overlaps. So it's not like, oh, initiate and then plan. No, if these were 5 things, you would have initiating, overlapping with planning. Now, in the scheme of size, to make it even fairer, planning could be in terms of effort, in terms of duration. Planning is significant, right? Now, in terms of monitoring and controlling, I want you to think about it like this. Monitoring and controlling is all encompassing. So there's a lot of overlap all throughout. In fact, you're monitoring and controlling all throughout the project. Executing is very significant because that is where a lot of the work takes place. So there does have to be some heavy overlap with the monitoring and controlling aspects. See? And then closing is not as huge, but it could span across several phases before you close out. So this, I just want you to have this bubble chart idea so that you're not just thinking linearly. It's not A, then B, then C, then D. No, there's a progression that is in that direction, but there's overlap and there are iterations and there are feedback loops. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you take a look at page 25 in the 6th edition. Now, someone says, well, Phil, it's not in the 7th edition. Isn't it a waste of time? No, it's not. The PMI still refer very heavily to this model across many other exams. This model, we're stuck with it. Honestly, I tell you, this is the best that you're going to get. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. Let's just take this and use it go forward. You get what I'm saying? So you're going to benefit if you know it. All right, let's talk about the knowledge areas, right? The knowledge areas are integration, unifying the project and combining it, scope, scoping out what needs to be done, schedule, scheduling the project, making sure you got a defined timeline, cost management, making sure that the budget is defined so that we know when we are over budget, on budget, and so on. Resource management, which deals with managing resources, acquiring resources in the first place, be they human, equipment, materials, supplies, and facilities. Then communications management, which deals with sending information to the right channel, through the right channel, to the right person. So we talk about the 5 W's and the H, the what, when, where, why, how, and who of communications, right? Who am I sending it to? Where's the information going to reside? Why do I need to send this, and so on? Then we have risk management, which is all about dealing with uncertainty that could impact the project. Then we have procurement management. And last but not least, we have stakeholder management. And there's another mnemonic for this, and the mnemonic goes like this. I saw 6 chipmunks quietly roasting coffee, reading poetry stories. Okay? I saw 6 chipmunks quietly roasting coffee, reading poetry stories. All right, now you got an idea of the knowledge areas and what they are. You need to populate the table. You could populate the table gradually over a period of time. Just make sure that what you're putting into the box, you really do understand what is being done. Okay, so I am going to use a series of abbreviations. Where I need to write in shorthand, I will, but I am going to cover very rapidly the 49 things with you. And I want to challenge you to stop this recording, and I want you to go back, and what I put in abbreviated form, when I do that, I want you to expand on it. Okay, so let's talk about the very first thing that should happen on any project in the world of the PMI. Like I said, you want to develop a project charter. Now, this is a process, okay? In the boxes, I'm going to put processes. Just remember at the top, you have knowledge areas. These here are knowledge areas. That's what they're called. Beg your pardon. These are process groups. And these at the side are knowledge areas. So just keep that in mind. 10 knowledge areas, 5 process groups. And then in the boxes, we have processes. So the first process is develop project charter. Develop project charter. This is where you develop a charter that authorizes the project. And sometimes you need a charter for a phase. Each phase could be chartered on some projects. When you have chartered the project, you are now authorized to apply resources to the project. So do keep these things in mind. Next, we move into planning and we develop project management plan. Now, these names may sound a little bit off to you because they're verb noun. So they kind of sound weird, like, what is that? Is that a command? It's a process. So develop project management plan is a process, okay? Then we go into execute. I'm going to make it even smaller here. We have a process known as direct and manage project work. Direct and manage project work. And that involves you, the project manager, directing and managing the work for the project. Okay, let's move this down because we're going to need more room. We got a lot of processes in scope. So I'm going to move these down just so that they can fit. All right. So directing and managing the project work is really a leadership kind of thing where you lead the team and you coordinate all leadership efforts. That's really it. And then we have manage project knowledge, which is where you learn your lessons, what went well, what didn't go so well, and you take that knowledge and you share it across the organization. That's why it's called managed project knowledge. That knowledge needs to be managed. You're not just waiting till the end of the project to get the knowledge. No, as you're going through the project, you're learning your lessons and you are documenting the lessons and sharing it with people and implementing it back in the project so you don't make the same mistakes, or so that you realize those same benefits and opportunities of doing things in a particular way. Okay. Then we get into monitoring and controlling. And this, it just makes sense. Like whatever you do in life, you are, for the most part, monitoring and controlling. You're crossing the road, you're looking, you're checking, you're gauging the distance of the bus to you, of a train to you. Some people have done a lousy job in monitoring and controlling and they get hurt. But then you also monitor and control even in the house. Maybe you're doing chores, maybe you're cooking, maybe you're operating an electronic appliance, maybe you're working with fire. You got to monitor and control. That's the general idea. So it's a very simple idea. It's just called monitor and control project work. Who doesn't monitor and control? I mean, everyone does. So these are not far-fetched ideas. Monitor and control project work. Okay, the next thing is change control, and we call it integrated change control. I like to give you a very mundane example. I like mundane examples because they stick. A very mundane example could be you're a student, and for the longest time, you've always gotten an allowance of $5 a day. And then COVID hits, and then you're out of school, and then you come back to school, and with the crazy stuff going on in the world, to get a decent lunch is now like $8. So you need to go back to your parents and ask for $3 more. There needs to be a change. There needs to be a change request. So how do you make the request? Well, in the real world, you just say, hey, mom, dad, can I have an additional $3? The price of lunch has gone up. It's cost an arm and a leg to get a decent lunch at school. And that's an idea of perform integrated change control. Perform integrated change control. Now let's break down the words. Perform, carry out. Integrated, interlocked. Touching many pieces and coordinated. So perform integrated change control. Perform change that is intentionally controlled across many areas. To begin with, schedule, cost, and scope. They all need to be integrated. If you're making a change in isolation of scope or schedule or cost, you're doing it wrong. So when I ask for $3 more, I've factored in that, yeah, I can still get this lunch at this place at this time. It doesn't mean I need to go somewhere else. It's right there. The scope hasn't changed. All that has changed is the cost. The schedule is still doing lunch break. You see, I like breaking things down into very mundane examples because through the mundane examples, you will better understand. So I want you, as you go through each line item, and I'm going kind of slow for this first one, but as you're going through each line item, I need you to come up with examples in your everyday life. All right, final one, closing. This is where we close the project or phase, and it's just called close project or phase. So again, an example in life, you got done with a thesis or you got done with a paper. Like one of my friends have been working on closing out of this course. My goodness. And my friend, she knows who she is. She's one of my students, but she knows we had an encounter with this professor. It seemed like this course would never end. You know, it seemed like it would go on and on and on, but it ended. Thank goodness. We closed project, we closed phase, we closed many different phases, and then we eventually closed the whole thing. Close project or phase. That's an example. Another example is just an assignment that you submit in college, right, or in high school, whatever, right? You close it out. You're done. You've handed over the deliverable. You're scored. You're happy. End of story. All right. So my suggestion to you, my friends, is to anchor PMBOK back to real world. Any project, whether it's a home cleaning project, building a pool, uh, anything, I'm telling you, it's not far-fetched. Now, we're going to go a lot quicker. We're moving into scope, but to show you how you should be thinking, I want to go beyond doing it linearly, like from left to right, right? You could fill it in by integration, scope, schedule, all the way on down, in its entirety. But instead, I want us to move in this direction. We're going to go that way, down like that. Okay. Because I have other videos you can find on this channel that do it across, but for now, we're going down in rows. So in columns through the rows. So the next one I'm going to is in stakeholder management. So in the very beginning of the project, you're going to identify stakeholders. Okay, you're going to identify who the project could affect and who could be affected by the project. All right, and then this one over here called Develop Project Management Plan, I'm going to frame it because it's a rather important one and it needs some explaining. So Develop Project Management Plan is not something that happens just a one-time thing and it's all done at once. No, there's a lot of stuff that happens in this column. Well, guess what? The stuff that you derive from this column, it actually all rolls up into the project management plan. So you actually have in your project management plan a bunch of stuff that you get from this column, such as scope management plan, schedule management plan, risk management plan, resource management plan, scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline. It's all in the project management plan. So if your teacher hasn't already taught you that, you will learn that, hopefully. Hopefully they're going to teach you that. So let's go into everything that happens in planning under Develop Project Management Plan. Okay, so we have plan, scope, management. Now I'm going to show you the redundancy in this table so that you feel more comfortable in it. All of the first processes of every knowledge area, from scope all the way on down to procurement, they have this ring to it. I'm going to show you this here. They all have this plan X management theme, where X is the knowledge area. So it doesn't really take that much to remember a whole bunch of them. See, they all follow this plan X management bend, where X is the name of the knowledge area. So if we just take the knowledge area schedule and put it in here, we have plan, schedule, management. If we take cost, it's called plan, cost, management. If we take quality, plan, quality, management. We take resources, plan, resource, management. We take communications, plan, communications management. We take risk, plan risk management. Take procurement, plan procurement management. And all this is saying is you're just planning, how are we going to manage this area. How are we going to manage procurement? How are we going to manage risk? How are we going to manage communications? How are we going to manage resources? How are we going to manage quality? And then the last one, plan stakeholder. But watch this. There's a little twist here. It's not management. It's called plan stakeholder engagement. In other words, how are we going to engage our stakeholders? So that's the only one that's different, but everything else, you can see it has that mantra of plan this management, plan that management, plan that management. Now, as you look under the hood, you got to go a step further into asking yourself, what do I do after I plan scope management? There's a logic to it. After you plan how to manage scope, then you begin collecting your requirements. So we have collect requirements. Okay, and then we define the scope that we need to get those requirements done. And then we create a work breakdown structure, create WBS. See that? And that's scope. And then in schedule, after you plan how to develop and how to manage the schedule, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to define the actual activities that have to be done. And you know, an activity just means task. So the itty bitty tasks that you need to do, you got to define activities. Then you got to sequence activities. Then you got to estimate the activity durations. How long will each activity take, right? So sequence the activities, put them in the logical order of occurrence, just so that you're testing the logic and the flow of the work you're doing. And after you estimate activity durations, you put all of that together into a schedule, a coherent schedule, and we call that developed schedule. And that's what you're doing in schedule management. But you need to think through, okay, what does it make sense to do next? Remember, the PMI asks you for 3 years of project management experience. So if this stuff isn't making sense, you've got to make it make sense because you got the aptitude to make it make sense. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to go into cost. And there are 3 things that happen under planning and cost. Very similar to what we did in schedule. We plan cost management, and then we estimate costs for each activity. It's like you're building a house and you want to furnish the house. Well, of course, you need to estimate the cost for each room. How much will it cost to paint a room? How much will it cost to decorate a room? How much will it cost to lay tile? These are all tasks, but you got to estimate each of those things. And then you roll them up into a final total. We call that determine budget. See that? And then we move into quality. We're done with quality. There's nothing else there. We go into resource management. We plan how to manage our resources. And then we estimate the activity resources. Okay. Then we go to communications. Then we get to risk. Risk is huge. So we're going to move this around so that we can make enough space for the enormity of risk. Risk is a 7-headed beast. So there's 7 things that you need to know in risk. And, you know, when I say know, I'm not just talking about the name. I mean, really know what is happening in each of those areas. Okay. So if you are following me with a pen and paper, I'm telling you, you are programming your brain to retain this stuff. And I want you to go back in here and I want you to watch it over and over and over and over and over again until you can anticipate what I'm going to say next. And the reason why you're doing this is not because you want to cram, but because you are trying to register. You're rewriting stuff that you may have known incorrectly. You're reprogramming your brain to know it well, okay? Trust me, there's power in repetition. So we plan how to manage risks, and then we identify the risks. What is a risk? An uncertain event that can impact the project positively or negatively. So you identify the risks, and then you perform a qualitative risk analysis. I'm trying my best not to use abbreviations because I really want you to register this. It is still so relevant to the exam as at 2023. Contrary to what a lot of people think or say, it is still so relevant, trust me. All right, and then next one, I'm just going to copy this because they're very similar. So qualitative risk analysis is where you score a risk. This is where you say a risk's probability is high, but its impact is low. A risk's probability is low, but its impact is high, or the impact is high, probability is high, right? We score the risks on a scale of 1 to, could be 1 to 5, 1 to 3, 1 to 10, differs company by company. Some companies just use high, medium, low. However your company decides to do it, you know, just register what is going on. And then we have a perform quantitative risk analysis. This is not just using some arbitrary number. This is where you actually know for sure, based on what the experts have said, there's a 70% chance this risk could happen, and there's a $1 million impact if it does. So we find what we call the expected monetary value, also called the risk magnitude. And that is what we do in perform quantitative risk analysis. And I have videos that talk about that on the channel. You can find them. Okay. So the next one is plan risk responses. So now that you have scored the risks in qualitative risk analysis, you've also prioritized them, you do another round of prioritization in quantitative risk analysis, and you have a good idea of how severe the risks are, or the opportunities, how significant they are. So we plan risk responses, right? And this is where you decide to either avoid, transfer, mitigate, accept, escalate negative risks, or you escalate, share, enhance, exploit, and accept positive risks. You know, and I call that the A-team mnemonic, ATEAM or EASEE. Okay, and yeah, those are your 5 for risk right there. We're done with risk for planning, and the next thing that happens is in procurement, and then stakeholder, and boom, you're done. We just went through the whole of planning. It seems ominous when you're looking at it, but now that I've gone through it with you, I am hoping that this makes sense. So for my friends on the call, I want you to put a chat into the chat box. If this is making sense, just put a chat in the chat box. And if you got any questions, please put a question in the chat. All right, so we're done with planning, and we are going to finish off the other columns. Now, I want to show you another trick in the area of executing. We've already gotten 2 done, but I want to give you a visual to show you which areas are blocked. So when we talk about scope, there is nothing in executing for scope. Neither is there anything for schedule or cost in executing. So that whole place is blocked. You see that? You see that visual I'm giving you there? I want you to remember there is blocked. So there's no reason to recall anything except this is blocked. Now, with the exception of those, everything else has something in it. But again, there is some sort of ring to these process names, okay? So for those of you who are color code oriented, I'm going to use a different color for the purpose of this illustration, okay? So I'm going to go to a kind of burnt brown reddish, just to help you remember, okay? So when it comes to executing, the word manage is prevalent, okay? So we have again a theme that says manage, and I'm going to use little letters, manage X, where X could be the name of the knowledge area, but it could be something else. So we have manage X, and then we have in one of these, we have another manage X somewhere here. We have a manage X somewhere here. We have a manage X somewhere here as well. And I'm going to show you a way of keeping stock of all the process groups. So here we have 2 processes in this column, right? Here we have 24. And here 22410 in executing, 22410, and then 12 in monitoring and controlling, and then 1 in closing, 224, 10, 12, 1. That's it. So when you're trying to keep a count, you got to ask yourself, is there anything missing? Okay. In risk, we don't have a manage something. Instead, we have an implement. Implement, the word implement, right? And then for procurement, we don't have a manage, we have a conduct. Okay. When it comes to resource is actually one of those pretty big areas because we have 6 processes in resources. So I'm going to move this down just a little bit so that we've got more room to play in the resource column. Let's move that down. And resources has 3 things. So we have a mnemonic that forms ADM. ADM. For those of you who may have extensively studied schedule, you know what the ADM method is. It's an alternative way of scheduling, but we have this ADM. So I'm showing you patterns so that you remember these things, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're good. Okay. So the first X is manage quality. And this is where you're carrying out your quality audits. A quality audit is carried out before the deliverable is created. So it means you're actually checking the process. You're not checking the product. You're checking the process to see, how well are we carrying out the work based on the quality standards we're meant to be adhering to. Remember, plan quality management is where you identify the standards that you need to adhere to, be it SOX compliance, be it Food and Drug Administration, FDA, whether it's OSHA regulations, whether it's Americans with Disability Act, whether it's SOX compliance, whatever it is. Managed quality is where you check the process like an audit, okay? So the A, going into the next one, resources, this is where you acquire resources and all manner of resources, human, equipment, material, supplies, facilities. The D stands for develop, team. And the M, manage, is manage team. Boom. Acquire resources, right? Acquire the resources you need, develop the team, send them for training, team building, offsites, mentor them, coach them, train them, whatever you need to do to get them to their optimum state so they can perform the project work. Manage team is where you're giving the team feedback. It's that simple. For every team, they need to be guided with KPIs, right? Key performance indicators. They need to be able to look back and understand their performance as a team, right? Individuals, yes, but also as a team, majorly as a team for this one. So this is where you give them feedback on their performance. In communications, just replace it with the word communications. Manage communications, and then implement risk responses. That's simple. Implement risk responses. Carry out the response. So are you going to mitigate, accept, avoid? In the case of positive risks, are you going to share the risk? Then go ahead and do it. This is where you do it. So if the risk said to deal with the risk of everyone getting wet for this event, we're gonna rent some canopies. The moment you buy the canopies, you've implemented the risk response, because the risk response is to mitigate. And the way to mitigate is to erect the canopies. So the moment you purchase those canopies, you are implementing the risk response. All right. Next, we have conduct, replace it with the word procurement. And last but not least, the manage X is manage stakeholder engagement. And what this means is engage with the stakeholder. Manage stakeholder engagement is a doing. Remember, it's in the executing process group. So it's the doing of the executing. This is where you are carrying out the engagement. So if I know my stakeholder is someone who goes to the cafeteria every lunch break, and I know my stakeholder doesn't like to be interrupted through the day, but hey, at lunch, she's at her happiest. I'm gonna make sure I connect with her in the cafeteria. She doesn't mind. And a lot of times you say, Phil, give me the breakdown of what's happening on the project. Eureka, that's my opportunity to engage this particular stakeholder in a particular way using those great interpersonal skills. So I'm going to sit down, I'm going to have lunch with that stakeholder, I'm going to give the stakeholder the 411 of the project at a high level. Boom, I just got done with managed stakeholder engagement. Now, for some other stakeholders, it's a more drawn out process. There might be travel involved, there might be a big old meeting, a big old dog and pony show, but the bottom line is you got to do it. You got to know the mousetrap that works for your unique stakeholder. All right. So we're almost done. The next one, again, I am going to use a different color just to, for those of you who are very color focused in terms of your brain is wired to things and how you saw them and particular colors. I'm going to use another color here. I'm going to make this pink. And this will stick in your brain. Be like, oh, it's a pink column, the pink column. Yeah. Okay. So for monitoring and controlling, again, there's a formula to it. And the formula to it is simply Control X. That's it. So we have Control X somewhere here. We have Control X here. We have Control X here. Control X here. Control X here. Not so fast. Control X here. And that's it. Now, what do we have in the other ones? In the ones that are human-oriented, humans, we don't like using the word control because it makes us seem like we're control freaks. Even though a lot of people say project managers are, we don't like that connotation, right? So we stay away from the word control here and we use the softer word of monitor. So we have monitor X for communications where there are humans involved, for risk where we cannot control uncertainties. So we use a softer word monitor. You can't control the uncertainties of tomorrow. You could only monitor them and react accordingly, right? And then we have stakeholder, monitor. You cannot or should not try to control your stakeholder. So we use the word monitor. All right, watch this, watch this. It's easy. Watch it, watch it, watch it. It's coming. All right, so we have control. You ready? Control scope. But for those of you who are calculating the numbers, you know that they're meant to be 12. So there's another process that happens above this, and it's just called validate. Validate scope. And validate scope is where you're checking the scope to make sure that you are on point. Okay, make sure that you're doing just what is required, no more, no less. Control scope is where you are preventing goal playing. Let me take that again. Validate scope is where your customer, I beg your pardon, is checking the deliverable. Control scope is where you are making sure that no one is doing extra things that were not bargained for or were not on the plan. Control schedule is where you're checking to make sure the team is following the timeline. Control cost is where you ensure the team is on budget, not going over budget. Control quality is where you are checking the deliverable before it goes to the customer. I know you're thinking, Phil, didn't you just say that the customer checks up here? Yes, there's a flow of a deliverable that you have checked. You first check it in control quality, and it theoretically goes to validate scope up here. But in reality, these two happen in succession. You have to control quality first, you should, before you validate scope. So validate scope is your customer and control quality is you. This is a really huge eureka moment for some people, so I want to make it very clear. Validate scope is a customer responsibility. Control quality is the performing organization or you, okay? Performing organization or you, the project manager. Make sense? Okay. So moving on to resources, this is another special one. In control resources, we do not refer to humans. The resources that we are controlling are the physical resources. So the materials, the supplies, the facilities, we make sure that they were used, they were utilized as promised, as intended, and there's nothing gone awry. All right. Next one is monitor communications. Just take the knowledge area, you see, replace the X with the knowledge area. Monitor risks, control procurements. Okay, and again, monitor communications is making sure communications are going according to plan. If they're not, you're going to change something. Monitor risk is making sure that you got the risks down and that there's nothing that is new, or if there is something that's new, you update your risk register, right? Control procurements, making sure that the procurement went according to plan. The seller has given you what you asked for. Now, I didn't talk about procurement that much, but conduct procurement is where you're selecting a seller or sellers. Control procurement is where you are ensuring the seller is giving you what you paid for. Monitor stakeholder engagement is the final one here. And this is where you are making sure your engagement level and approach is on point. Okay? And we got close project or phase, and we should be done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. There are your 49 processes, my friends. Close project or phase. Like I said in the very beginning, you're either closing out the project or phase, closing out a phase or the project as a whole. Those are the 49. Look at it, my friends. I think we spent about, what, 30, 35 minutes. Watch this video relentlessly. I want you to listen to it over and over and over and over again till you can anticipate what I'm going to say next. It's free. I'm putting out free for you. Hey, this is my 2023 gift to you. Use it. It is so important you know this table, my friend, because if you don't know this table, they could run circles around you with stuff that is not even that hard. But because you don't know it, it is going to appear very difficult. Okay, so I'm advising you, please do it. I'm going to show you something else. This table is so important that in a previous video, I took this same table and I broke this table down into an agile perspective. In other words, you're in integration. How do you do develop project charter in Agile? There's an Agile project charter. There's a product roadmap and the vision. How do you do develop project management plan? There's a product backlog. There's a sprint backlog. You see, when you get this configuration, you can explain other frameworks more thoroughly, and you can actually account for all that happens a lot better. I want to encourage you, if you haven't opened the Agile Practice Guide to read how each knowledge area is carried out in the world of Agile, I want you to go to the Agile Practice Guide. I'm just going to put it here, Agile Practice Guide, page 90 to 95. In this Agile Practice Guide, you're going to find PMI's breakdown of how every knowledge area, from integration all the way on down, is carried out in an Agile setting. Okay? Hopefully, when you watch this again, you're going to make it ×2. I talk very slowly and deliberately sometimes, just so that nothing goes missing or falls through the cracks. And so those who speak English as a second language can actually hear every word I'm saying. But for those of you who are like, Phil, you're slow, go quicker. Speed it up ×2, my friend. All right. Thank you very much for joining me. Again, Happy New Year to those of you who I haven't wished. Happy New Year already. I'm looking forward to you killing this exam, crushing it, putting a chokehold, and doing havoc on the test. All right. Thank you very much. If you got any questions, put them down below. Remember, if you are looking for training, coaching, and help that breaks it down exactly as I did, go in meticulously through the content. You need to go on down to our website. It's praizion.com. That's Praizion. I'll show it to you on the screen. Go on down to praizion.com, because I know some of you need hand-holding. It's not enough for you to do stuff alone. So go on down to our site. Take a look at the various vehicles we've got. We train everything from the PMP exam immersion, which is a half-day boot camp, to full-on 35 contact hours through our project management masterclass, or CAPM exam, whatever you're working on, just go ahead and get some time on your calendar to attend one of our courses. Thank you very much. All the very best, and bye for now.